So I thought that was pretty impressive, right? What we just witnessed. I think when we are talking about the growth playbook for digital payments is just one element of this entire digital acceleration journey of our country. And it is built on the solid foundation of digital identity, which at our scale, I guess, is something nothing short of a miracle. And it's really, really heartening to see where this is being taken to the next steps and the next steps. And this journey is obviously, it's not an even journey, as many of you here would already be aware. So I actually had the privilege of being able to listen to at least the last 10 minutes and, look at the demos that were being shown. I think it is really powerful, and I'm not sure if the UIDI team is still here, but I, at least from my side, would love to give another round of applause to what UIDI as an institution is doing for our country. So let's start with that. And once again, a very good morning to everyone here at the Bharat Fintech Fest. I think we have here leaders from banks and fintechs, investors, founders, policymakers, and ecosystem players. I think this is a gathering of the people who have made this digital payment story a success story already in India. So I think for me, it's both a privilege and an opportunity and a huge responsibility to come and speak on a theme that actually it directly speaks to to the moment of, to this moment in our evolution as a digital payment or of digital payments in our country, right? When you talk about partnerships, platforms, possibilities, what we have achieved at our population scale could not have been by accident. We have come here, this level of growth, it was designed, it was governed, and it is being sustained through deliberate collaboration, through resilient platforms, and a shared commitment to a public purpose. Now, this summit brings us together at a moment where leadership in digital finance is not only about building reach, it is now about building impact. What should we do with all this reach? And where does this take us next? I think that's the key question which I want to spend a few minutes or the next 5 to 10 minutes talking about. But before we go there, I think it's important to first acknowledge one foundational fact or a truth about India's digital payment success. Digital payments in India, and I'll talk a little bit about the scale that we've achieved. Again, I'm sure none of that is going to be news to the people in this room. But we didn't achieve the scale because of one single organization, one breakthrough product, or even a singular piece of regulation. That's not how we reached here. We achieved the scale because the entire system moved together. Banks and financial institutions, they modernized their infrastructure, their access models. Fintechs built on innovation, usability, reach. Merchants actually picked it up because they were able to see the benefits, which were both real, immediate, and tangible. And technology providers, there should be a large number of technology providers who are part of this summit. I think they were able to deliver something truly remarkable. And the kind of systems they were able to build against the diversity, the uneven connectivity, all kinds of challenges that we had, it's all of this coming together. And then the regulators playing their part with ensuring that even while they are enabling progress, they're taking care of systemic stability and strengthening consumer protection. All of these, in fact, came together to get us to where we are. We are all very proud of the point where we are in our digital payments journey. But it's not been one single thing. It's all of these elements that have come together. And I think that tells us that this entire success has been partnership-led. It has been an ecosystem, collaborative journey, even while there is competition. Of course, there's competition. These are all commercial entities, so there is competition. But there has been this element of collaboration between different elements of the ecosystem. And I think that should lay the foundation for the next growth playbook. So the partnership will be the model for even the next stage of success. And in this first phase, what we did was about building scale, right? It was about speed, reliability, ubiquity. We wanted a system that will serve the largest and the most diverse population in the world. And we wanted it to be open, interoperable, and resilient. That ambition has been realized in a way and at a scale in India at which I think there aren't any other examples. No one else across the globe has even attempted it, let alone sustained it and realized it. We run one of the largest real-time digital payment ecosystems in the world. I think we publish these numbers every month, so I'm sure everybody is aware. We process about 21 billion transactions a month now, value of about 28 lakh crores. But that's not the most important highlight figure. What's important is that this is delivered with the participation of around 680 banks and financial institutions, about 500 million individuals and 65 million merchants. So it's not one thing that is making this magic come across. Also, this is delivered across villages, towns, cities, in our country, which is marked by every kind of diversity, including, obviously, linguistic is there, but wide variations in not just connectivity, but also digital literacy. But even with all this, UPI is already recognized as the largest. I think we roughly account for nearly half of all digital real-time payments. It's also being accepted now across countries. And this actually places the next, I would say, the challenge and also the opportunity for us to build from where we have reached. So when we look at all of these elements of the success of digital payments in India, I think it's a reasonable question. Then why are we talking about a growth playbook? Why are we talking about something that we have already achieved? Digital payments in India are embedded in everyday life. Adoption is already widespread. The transactions continue to rise and grow every month. The infrastructure has already demonstrated that it is scalable, it's hugely stable. Why do we even need a growth playbook? The answer can seem a little obvious. Digital payments are not peripheral. It's not only restricted to metropolitan cities. The ecosystem is very vibrant. I'll talk a little bit about the innovation. That innovation cycle is very fast. New products and new use cases continue to emerge. So instead of, not just in this forum, and I'm sure not just in this session, but there will be other sessions and other speakers who are going to talk about the digital payments and where that is growing. Why do we need all this discussion and why do we need a playbook? Maybe we can just, all of us can just put out a post which says digital payments growth achieved in India. But I think the important thing is at this scale, growth is not guaranteed. In fact, it will and it can become uneven and it can even be very fragile. Because it can concentrate around a narrow set of behaviors and a narrow set of use cases. And it can leave large populations and large use cases absolutely untouched and obviously not create any impact. We can have transactions, but we may not have impact. And if we don't have a playbook, then there will be growth because of the sheer power of our economy, our size. There will be growth, but that will be accidental growth, not planned growth. And accidental growth can introduce risks which are social, economic, systemic. And that's why we need a growth playbook. So yes, with all of the success behind us, with all of the great work that many people in this room and outside have been able to work together to achieve, we do need a growth playbook. And we need it not because we have failed, but we need it because we've succeeded. Because success has raised expectations. Now that we have achieved this level of digital payment success, what next? What are going to be the consequences and how will we fundamentally change what this next phase of digital payments growth should achieve, could achieve and should achieve? I think the next phase of growth is not going to be about, we already process I told you about 21 billion transactions. There are many days when we cross 700 million transactions a day, real-time digital transactions. I think we will soon cross 1 billion plus transactions a day. That's going to be a huge feat. I'm sure we'll all feel like celebrating it. That's a question of not of if we will do it, only when we will do it. But I think the bigger question is not that we'll do 1 billion transactions a day. The bigger question is going to be, so what? So what changes because we have 1 billion digital payment transactions in a single day and we are able to process it? What really changes? And I think that's the most important thing I want to, spend the next 5-10 minutes on. Because the next phase will not be about just digital payment transactions. It'll be about the outcomes that these can create, and which will result in some meaningful participation from every individual and every enterprise that powers our economy. Because we'll have to go from building reach to building depth. Reach is not easy. We haven't come here. This last decade of growth has not been easy. It's taken a lot of investment, but it had a different playbook, right? There was onboarding, there's incentives, there's a lot of things which we've done very well. The only thing is we'll have to shift gears for the next decade of growth. Because it will require the users to trust the system, not just when the transaction is successful in less than 2 seconds. It takes roughly 2 to 3 seconds for a transaction. It's phenomenal with the number of players that are involved. But they'll have to trust it even when things go wrong. The next phase will come from merchants not just looking at this as a collection tool. Digital payments is today nothing but a collection tool for majority of the merchants who accept those payments. But this should be a pathway to working capital, to protection, and to business resilience. Because we'll have to go beyond just the access and the reach. There's one other element that I think is important before we get into the how and the what we need to do, which is another reality which is often softened in public narratives. We get stuck with the headline of the 700 million transaction, but that growth is not even. It's actually pretty uneven. Even within our country, like the usage intensity, the kind of use cases, the frequency, it varies widely. Even if you look at just the headline number of where do these transactions happen, actually the top 10 states account for nearly about 42%. But that again is like an average which hides the truth. Maharashtra alone is 10% of all transactions. The next 2 states is next 11%. So the top 3 states account for 21%. Now, one can argue that, okay, depends on population and economic activity, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, we can go and look at, deep dive into what does this really mean. But at the highest level, even like Delhi alone accounts for about 2.5% of the transactions. All of Northeast is about less than 1.5. And this entire usage itself this is only at the highest level. Then you're talking about total transactions. When you get into frequency of transactions, kind of transactions, the entire picture becomes clear that this is not the time to rest easy on our laurels of how far we have come in our digital growth journey. There's a lot of work to be done. And even while other elements, so there's the thing about the transaction going through, but other elements like dispute resolution, customer support, these have strengthened over time. And they continue to remain a very, very important element of our shared responsibility if we are going to take this to the next level. For lots of small and micro merchants, actually these consistent digital transactions, and in fact, even in metros, even in Bombay, even right in our backyards, maybe like I can say that right outside the NPCI office, there are merchants who are accepting digital transactions. I'm not really sure that has translated into access to formal credit for the street vendors who are right outside the NPCI office. I'm not sure that they have improved cash flow management. Yes, they can accept digital payments, but it hasn't really changed the fundamentals of how do they get from the level where they are to the next level of financial and economic prosperity. And therefore, this entire opportunity that is in front of us is about ensuring that these digital payments lead to stronger and more pervasive access to credit. Because payments are only proof of transactions. Credit is actually the proof of empowerment. So if individuals can transact digitally but not have access to formal credit, then we've delivered convenience but not security. That's fleeting. We can all feel good about it, in our conferences, but really nothing really has changed in the lives of the people whom we are putting as numbers and feeling proud of. And lots of small businesses, they continue to rely on informal credit. So, there's again efficiency, but not resilience. In fact, there was some data point that we were looking at. I think RBI, released some report, and nearly 6% of all loan outstandings are still gold loans in our country. One can look at it in many ways. Is it good? Is it bad? But I think the only thing that jumps out is that access to credit is still very collateral based. So what happens to people who don't have collateral? What happens to people who don't have assets? They have incomes but no accumulated assets. What happens to entrepreneurs whose livelihoods are real, but their balance sheets are almost invisible at this point of time? Or first-time borrowers who need and who are proof of economic participation, but they don't have the documents that are needed for them to get access to credit. And therefore, I believe that the big opportunity or the playbook that this group of esteemed people, as well as outside in the world or in the country, all of us who have the responsibility of taking digital payments to digital empowerment, and empowerment not just in the narrow sense of, hey, now I can do a transaction on my phone using a QR code, but it makes a difference in my life, is about taking this payments layer to the credit layer. I think beyond that, there's one other element, which is about trust. And this can sound a little flaky because you'll say, what do you mean by trust? Do you mean that little green tick? And yes, there are digital ecosystems who are trying to talk about trust in multiple ways. But it is important that there is, confidence in the system. And we build this through better and more efficient redressal mechanisms. Even today, when a payment fails or when a customer makes a wrong payment, if you go and ask a lot of people about what do they do, in fact, I'll share with you one of my, bank RMs. This is a person who works in a bank. You would imagine if they have done a wrong transaction, they would know what to do, and it would be really easy for them to be able to get grievance redressal. Very sheepishly calls me to say, can I ask you for a help? I made a wrong payment. What can I do? I said, you work in a bank. You should know what to do. Sadly, she didn't. And if that is the scenario for people who are, and this is a heavy digital payment user, this is a educated SECA, living in Mumbai, whatever else you can say. Can you imagine what is the scenario for people across who are using digital payments? Are 700 million transactions a day, remember? Do they have the same level of access, and do they have the same level of trust that when there is a grievance, if there is a grievance, it will get addressed in the most seamless manner? And I think that is where is the next level of opportunity and responsibility that lies. I'm going to take the important point is also that there's work being done here, but I think we need to accelerate a lot more. In fact, at the last GFF, the pace of innovation never slows. I think the only point I'm trying to talk about here is what do we and how do we need to innovate on now? This is not just about making the transaction even faster. Yes, you can keep making the checkout even faster. You can make it even smoother for the top 1%, or even for the 99% when things go right. But what are we doing to ensure that when things go wrong, it's really just as seamless? So amongst the many innovations that NPCI unveiled at the last Global FinTech Fest, it ranged from ensuring there are multi-signatory accounts for in UPI so that small businesses can use it, to being able to use UPI-based cash withdrawals at micro ATMs. Again, that's where we were actually enabling it using Aadhaar, but sometimes that population might not have the right biometric, their thumbprints get faded because of their hard physical labor. So there's a whole range of innovations, including IoT payments, some agentic small pilots, etc. But the one that I want to talk about in the context of trust is something that we launched in a pilot with 13 banks called UPI Help. And this is important as we chart out the playbook for the next growth playbook for digital payments. Because what this does, firstly what it is actually our natively built small language model. It's an AI-based model, which has been trained on our data, which has been built and implemented in pilot at 13 banks by NPCI, absolutely free of cost, to ensure that customers now have an access to a very uniform method and we started with 3 use cases. It was about mandates. So revoking mandates. Once you're given a mandate, you want to stop it. Most merchants will make it almost impossible for you to find the button where you can go and actually stop your mandate, right? It was one of the most, amongst the leading causes for why people were calling up and trying to find out what to do with UPI. So it's automated that and made it uniform. About 6.5 lakh odd mandates were actually modified, either paused, revoked, modified, just in the last 3 months since this has been rolled out in pilot. There's also a bunch of other things it can do, and we continue to evolve that small language model. But the reason I talk about it is that at our scale of population, this data, AI, and digital identity, it'll become foundational to ensuring that we build trust, increase the level of the system safety, and the resiliency. So the timely detection of any irregular activity, so that's one model which is really important as we get to our playbook, but also about ensuring that the most urgent and immediate use case of AI in financial systems and digital payments is in actually being able to detect, monitor, and deter any fraud. And there's a bunch of work that is being done by NPCI, obviously in collaboration with all of the partners to get us to that. So coming back to our playbook about the possibilities for the next decade. Now I'll repeat what I said. Payments are not the destination. Sometimes, especially the payments industry, gets too carried away with payments, within payments, digital payments, the entire fintech. We get too carried away with the value we move, the volume we move, the nanoseconds it now takes to do transactions. But I think they are just the starting point. For millions of individuals and small businesses, digital payment, it's valuable. I don't want to underplay the value of what we have achieved. It is the first formal interaction with the financial system. But the real measure of this impact will lie in what this interaction, this first formal interaction, will enable, and whether it enables access to formal credit, to transparent savings and investment products, insurance that mitigates risk, and loyalty frameworks. Again, all of this, if that digital payment is not enabling access to all of this, then we can again just go and put out a post which says we've achieved what we needed to. And that's it for digital payments. I think we've already made a lot of meaningful progress. And already some models are evolving. Lots of players are looking at the merchant data and the flows instead of just like a stock position or collateral. Information asymmetry, more of this information is going to resolve that. But I think the opportunity and the size of what lies ahead of us is really substantial. Again, there is any number of data points out there, but one is about 80% of MSMEs actually lack access to formal credit. And if they are really, given how fragmented our economy is, how small a percentage of the formalized economy is, and India actually, there's people, we used to say India lives in its villages. I think that's now expanded a little bit to India lives in its villages and in the entire informal sector, because the formal sector is limited and has limited potential for growth. Most of the growth is coming there. If the financial institutions are not going to be able to enable or take the power of the technology, what we have achieved in digital payments, and actually enable access to credit for the entire informal economy, then we would have really passed on a huge opportunity that's ahead of us. So unlocking this potential will again require the partnership-first thinking, but at a deeper level. If we can't just repeat what we have done so far, it will have to be at a deeper level. The banks, fintechs, regulators, technology providers, all of us will need to collaborate to ensure that the innovation remains aligned with the stability, trust. I think, if there is one word I would like to, or 2 words I would like to leave you all with, it's going to be access to credit and trust. Those are going to be the most important elements of the playbook that we need to write. So the first decade, and UPI is nearly a decade old now. The first decade was about proving that India can build and scale world-class infrastructure. We are really proud of what we have built. I don't think there is a single overseas, conference or in anywhere where any of our leaders, whether it's the Prime Minister or any of our leaders, when they go, I think singularly they are proud about what the digital payments ecosystem has achieved. But we have to consolidate these gains, and we have to ensure that the next decade will be about proving that this infrastructure, this digital infrastructure that's been built, it can consistently translate this participation into protection, access, and resilience. India's digital payment story, it's a huge success story. It's like a bestseller, but I think that the most important chapter of that story is yet to be written, and the responsibility to ensure that this remains a page turner is on the group of people who are assembled here, and obviously all the other people who are part of the digital financial ecosystem, to ensure that we are able to write this next story in a way that we can be even prouder of achieving what we have achieved so far. The responsibility, the opportunity is real, the responsibility is immense, and I do hope that all of us are going to rise to the occasion and get to that point. Thank you all very much. Jai Hind.
Now may I request Samir Singh Jaini to please fill stage. A huge round of applause. Thank you so much, Ms. Sohini Rajola. It was a pleasure hearing you.